G'day guys. Next year, 11 council members in Queens will have to step down due to term limits. In June, there will be many fierce races as people look to take those positions. Now, we plan to speak to as many candidates running for office as possible in the next 6-9 months. Today, we're going to speak to Brent O'Leary. He's running for the 26th District Council spot that's currently held by Council Member Jimmy Van Bramer. There are 7 people already have come forward for that spot. Well, hi Brent. Thank you very much for joining me today.
Thank you, Christian. I appreciate the opportunity.
So Brent, you're running for the 26th District Council seat. And, for people who don't know you, could you just tell us about yourself and perhaps why you're running for the seat?
Sure. I'm running for office to give back to the community, which gave me and my family our chance. Make sure that all people in the district have the opportunity and resources to get as far as their hard work and dreams can take them. So actually, my grandparents actually moved to this country, immigrated to this country in 1916 with nothing and settled in Sunnyside in the 1930s on 40th Street. So my father grew up here, went to St. Teresa's, and then to Long Island City High School. After that, he served in World War II, so he was the first member of our family to go to college, went to Hunter's College, and then he was able to start some small businesses here, and he was a union member in the Electricians Union, Local 3, and it's because of their hard work, really, and the good public school education that I got and the government support that I was able to go to college. I actually was only able to go to college on financial aid, and I worked in the mailroom all through college, and then I was actually able to go to law school again on financial aid. I'm really here to give back and to make sure that that everybody has those same opportunities, especially now in our post-COVID world where things are getting tougher. And when I say all people, I'm talking about all of our communities. So our communities of color, our LGBTQIA community, our immigrant communities who have been the hardest hit by this virus, and our communities of people with disabilities who've already been struggling.
Now tell us more about, where you live now, how long you've lived there, and, your ties to the greater district.
Oh, sure. I've been living here now for 12 years. As I mentioned, my grandparents and father and relatives lived here, so I've been around the neighborhood my whole life. I was born in Jackson Heights myself, right down the 7 line, so I made it a few stops. I went to Trinity College in Hartford, Connecticut, where I studied history and legal studies. And then I was able to go to law school at Boston University. Then, as Bugs Bunny would say, I took a left turn at Albuquerque, and I ended up in Japan for 10 years. It was a great experience, and I loved it. But then I decided it was time to come home, and this is where I felt home was. So I moved back here, finished off my legal career, and then I've been doing community service. It's interesting. My father joked. He said, "You move to the opposite side of the world, and then you come back and settle 1 mile away from where I was, where I grew up." And I said, "Yes, exactly. Life is a circle, and that's how it happens sometimes." So I'm very glad to be in this neighborhood and plan to spend the rest of my life here.
All right. Well, wonderful, Brent. So you're involved with a number of civic groups. Can you just tell people a little bit about those groups and what you're actually doing?
Sure. I've been involved in this community for the last 12 years. So for me, service is not just something you do. It's really a way of life. It's important to me not only to create the programs that address the community needs, but also to bring the people together and organizations to work together to support each other. One of the things I'm most proud of is the annual Thanksgiving food drive. So there was an article in the New York Times about how there was a crisis in the food pantries. So I got my friends together and I founded our annual Thanksgiving food drive, where we actually put contribution boxes all over Manhattan and Queens. And then over a 3-week period, we go and we collect those boxes, sort them, and distribute them. So every year for the last 6 years, we've been distributing 5,000 pounds of food and critical items to the local food pantries here in Long Island City, Sunnyside, and Woodside. Obviously,
as a reporter, I've seen you with various groups, the Hunters Point Civic Association, the United 40s, the Kiwanis, even the Woodside Sunnyside Lions Club. So could you just sort of put a bit of meat on those bones to sort of tell people what you do with those organizations?
Sure. So I'm currently the president of the board at Woodside on the Move, where for many years we provide free and low-cost after-school and summer programs, including arts, schools, sports, education, We also do housing rights and tenants advocacy. So we did about 4,000 people last year. We helped them with their housing issues, advocating for rent freezes, including get legislation passed to prevent landlords from unethically raising your rent. I founded the Hunters Point Civic Association in Long Island City 10 years ago, and that is where we have had meetings and government officials and government agencies down, and we've been advocating against overdevelopment, making sure we have the proper resources for our neighborhood, green space, traffic calming measures, investing in better infrastructure, and we also hold our annual Community Unity Street Fair and holiday celebrations.
Amazon, of course, a couple of years ago was big news. How did you what was your view on Amazon and sort of like a big company coming to the neighborhood and, you know, the potential jobs and the potential development?
Well, yeah, I was very vocal in my opposition. I hosted meetings, attended rallies, and wrote an article in the paper that I was against the deal. And it's simply public land is for public use. I'm going to oppose any deal which is giving public land to private developers. We don't have enough land for our schools, community centers, green spaces, libraries, or other vital infrastructure. And we can't afford to give $3 billion in potential tax revenue to one of the wealthiest companies in the world. This is a union-busting company which exploits its workers. They should be taxed appropriately instead of being given tax breaks, punished for their labor abuses, and truthfully, they're a monopoly which has been destroying small businesses, and I think that they probably should be broken up under our antitrust laws.
Okay, Brent. Now, obviously, only a small portion of that land where Amazon was going to go was public. A lot of it belonged to private owners like, say, Plaxel, various others. So given that, I mean, if the public land wasn't a component of it, would have you supported it? And also, what are your thoughts on, you know, people saying, hey, listen, 25,000 jobs were lost that could have been, which would be very helpful now, given the economy. What is your view on that argument?
Right. Well, actually, the private developers were both looking to upzone. So they were trying to take public assets, which is which is air rights, mm-hmm. and increase the density. So that was going to put a bigger strain on our infrastructure. They are allowed to work within their present zoning. So if they want to work within that is fine. If they're coming to the public to ask for those public assets, then they need to contribute back at least equal value for what they're getting. So I listen, but it is, at the end of the day, I believe it has to be a community-driven plan. I got the community together, and we had meetings on Annabelle Basin saying what we need there. So if those needs are met, then there could be something which is worked out, but it has to be meeting the community needs, not the profits of the real estate industry.
Obviously, there are two big projects that are being discussed at the moment in the 26th Council District. There is the Annabelle Basin plan, and then there's now the one over, by Kaufman Astoria, the development there. What are your views on the potential of those? I mean, they're both rather large, 15 buildings down by Annabelle Basin, and we're talking about, the developers are also talking again, though, about 25,000 jobs. And then, of course, at Kaufman Astoria, we're talking about 2,500 housing units and, I think a couple of thousand permanent jobs as well. So how are you going to look at those and assess those in the current state of the economy and sort of people's view on development?
Right. And I'm all for jobs, but I want quality jobs for the neighborhood, and small business jobs. So that's actually part in the plan that we put together. We asked for retail there. We asked for small businesses, which would get, affordable rents.
And we talking about Annabelle Basin here, yeah.
Yeah, and it's same would apply for the Astoria project. Mm-hmm. And we applied, and we wanted union jobs both during construction and post construction. So there's a lot of things that we can meet on, and I'm always happy. I mean, at the end of the day, it has to be something which meets the needs of the neighborhood. So I want quality jobs for people in the neighborhood. We need to keep areas for our schools, for our green space, retail jobs, job training programs. So the thing is, I'm not against development. I'm just I want the community-driven development, not the real estate industry-driven development. Right. And with regards to the affordable housing, I really think that that's a Trojan horse. When you when the person who has an average median income in Queens doesn't qualify for what's called affordable housing. And when you're saying a studio apartment for over $2,000 a month, I don't think that addresses our needs. So, I mean, I really think that's fake affordable housing. We need true affordable housing, which I would actually try to tackle with things like not-for-profit developers, having community land trusts, and having other like Mitchell Lama style programs, like the Big Six Towers. That's a good success of how we can actually make affordable housing. So, and the one thing I do think a problem is that we now have the EDC, the Economic Development Corporation, which should be helping us develop our economy, but instead is almost a front for the real estate industry. And we have to negotiate with them for the future of our neighborhood. I just believe that's wrong. We should be working with city planning and having the community involved and discussing what needs we have, and then seeing how developers can meet those needs. So I just think the process is backwards right now.
Right. Okay. But you're not opposed to the concept of development per se, say at Annabelle Basin. You know,
No.
you could live with a mixed use development of some scale. Is that kind of what you're saying?
No, I think it's a great opportunity, especially because there's so much public land. The DOE building, I think, is 500,000 square feet. Mm-hmm. And also, it's a wonderful space because it would connect the Hunters Point neighborhood with the Queensbridge neighborhood. So my vision, which I have put forth there, is to have a school there, or a few schools, because it's a very big area, and that would really integrate our two neighborhoods. And I would love to have a teen center there and some more green space. The private developers are fine to develop on both sides, and we will work with them to make sure the whole area works as a whole. But yeah, there's no reason for us to lose any private land and any public land. And if the private developers on both sides, if they want to, increase their zoning or something like that, that's a discussion we can have depending on whether it meets the needs of the neighborhood.
Okay. All right, Brent. Now, another big issue, of course, in the last few months has been the police. Big issue in the city council was defunding the police. The number was $1 billion, of course. Some fuzzy math would say, it wasn't quite that much. But what is your sort of thoughts on defunding the police and on just the NYPD in general in this climate? How would have you voted on the budget recently?
Well, no, I agree with it. Especially with COVID-19 and its effects on our budget, it's going to be essential that any money goes where it's most needed. So the budget of the police force was $5 billion before de Blasio started, and he raised it by $1 billion. Mm-hmm. So what we need to do is allocate these resources into a lot of the underlying causes of crime, which is poverty, education. I think we get to social services, that is a way to bring it down. And $5 billion is still a sufficient number for our police force. And I've even spoken to our police captain about it. I deal with our 108th all the time, and I appreciate the work they do. There are serious issues, and there is systematic racism in our police force. So it's not only, making sure that resources go to the right place, but we also have to make sure that we rebuild our police force in such a way that we can make sure that racists and other people who should not be behind a badge are not there, and periodic reviews, and even maybe mental health counseling and other services to make sure it's a tough and it's an important job, and we have to make sure that the right people are the ones doing it.
Okay, Brent. Now you have people that say, do we reform it or defund it? What are you saying? Are you talking more about reform, or are you talking about more about defund or reduce cuts? What are you kind of talking about there, Brent?
I mean, defund is a misnomer. So defund means moving that instead of a $6 billion budget, a $5 billion budget, and moving $1 billion to the social services. So I'm supportive of that. I think the $1 billion should be moved to the social services, and $5 billion is sufficient for our police force at this time. There's going to be other things that we need to do to reform it, to make sure that the people who are given a badge and given that power have the right temperament, have the right mental faculties, and of course, we can never allow anybody with racist tendencies on that. So I'd be looking for more community oversight, regular review, seeing what complaints come up, and if people, and also what jobs police should be doing. So I think sometimes we ask them to do things that they are not trained for.
Now, Brent, my last question regarding the police is, though, do you think the number of cops on the street should be declining? I mean, we're getting at retirements and we're basically through attrition losing numbers. Do you think that's okay, or do you think that the number should be stable where it is?
I mean, right now, I mean, we would like to keep, I mean, if there's retirements, we will be looking to replace them. And, you know, we don't want to be losing good police officers. So, of course, I mean, safety is important and we need a police force. So I will make sure that there are enough police to keep our neighborhood safe.
All right, Brent, thanks. Now, another big issue of the job as being a council person is community board appointments. Mm-hmm. How would you go about those appointments? I think the council member handles half of them, the borough president half of them, although the borough president has to sign off on all of them. But how would you select candidates?
Right. Well, that's the point. Is I wouldn't. I'm proposing direct elections as it's done for district leaders. There are many great people on the community board and my friends, and I appreciate their hard work and dedication. But I believe process is important. And I believe in direct democracy. So who is recognized as a community leader should not be decided by an elected official. The community should have the right to say who speaks for them. So I believe communities should choose their own board members by vote. And as you said, a city councilman has power or influence over these appointments. So one of the first things I'm doing if I am elected is taking away power from myself, because I believe that the community should have that power and it shouldn't be influenced by my decision.
Right. I mean, you could stack the deck with whoever you wanted kind of thing on a community board. But at the same time, I mean, how are you going to have 50 people? How is the public going to know 50 people in which to vote for? I mean, that's a lot of people and a lot of elections. Would you do it on a rolling basis? How would you do it?
Well, I mean, as I said, we do it right now for our district leaders. We do it right now for our council, our Democratic council committee. So basically, it's the same process. You have to go out and get a certain number of signatures, and then you have to get your friends and neighbors and say, this is what I want to do, and this is, why I should. It's just, that makes the person accountable to the neighborhood and not accountable to, a political appointment.
Of course, that would require the city charter to change, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Right.
All right. Now, another big issue is schools. What can be done to bring more schools to the district? And of course, as you know, being down in Long Island City, there is a great need for them in the Court Square area in particular. What are your thoughts on that? What would you do?
Definitely. But the problem for schools has never been money. So I speak to the school construction authority all the time. It's always been space. So as you've mentioned, the School Construction Authority has been looking for a space for a school in Court Square for the last 2 years without success. I see, land right there next to them in the Sunnyside yards, which a little bit could be taken for green space and schools, but we'll talk about that later when it gets to be a fight over that. But then again, this is why, again, I'm fighting so hard to make sure that public land is not privatized. So I'll be searching for land throughout the district to make sure we have enough schools. One of the factors that is consistently shown to help children is small class size. So I rallied at City Hall for smaller class size and for the need for more, and this needs more schools, especially now in post-COVID where, kids have to be more socially distanced. So this is a top priority. And not only, just the schools, but also the proper resources for the schools and the teachers to make sure they're safe and the quality of our education doesn't suffer. I mean, I truly believe that education is the key to the American dream and a great equalizer in our society. So I will be making sure that everybody has access to quality education. And that includes free college and vocational schools.
All right, that's terrific. Poverty is a big problem right now. A lot of people, let's take, undocumented immigrants. They're getting nothing from the government at the moment. Many of them work in industries where, there have been big layoffs. Then other people too, who work in service jobs are also finding it very difficult. You see through food lines, the numbers are big. What can be done, as a council member? What would you do in the 26th council district to alleviate that problem?
Right now, I think it's the most critical thing is small business. Small business is the backbone of the economy. It creates the most jobs, especially for low and middle income families. So we are in a small business crisis. And this crisis started before COVID with the skyrocketing rents. So the pandemic only exacerbated it. But like when a mom and pop goes under, it affects so many people. You know, the employees, their family, the surrounding neighborhood, and so on. It has this ripple effect. So I was proud to go to City Hall and testify for the Small Business Jobs Survival Act. And it's one of the first pieces of legislation that I'm going to be pushing to get passed if I'm elected. You know, with all the closures across the city, this is more vital than ever. So I'm going to fight to give small businesses the option to get a 10-year lease so they can have a security to plan their business, provide relief to the small businesses which are affected by COVID, tax landlords who leave their storefronts empty, and make it easier to start and maintain small business. I'm also going to be fighting to bring the quality living wage jobs to our area that we need. You know, I'm from a proud union family, and I'll be working with our labor leaders to support their mission and fight for more quality union jobs. This has always been an avenue for advancement in America, and I think those are vital.
Now, Brent, there's always tension, though, between small businesses and living wages. Mm-hmm. You know, many bars and restaurants found it very difficult when the minimum wage went up. Many small retailers have trouble when the minimum wage goes up. There's that tension. How do you keep both parties happy? How do you keep the wheels of the economy going, given that natural tension?
Right. No, it's always difficult, and that's why I do everything I can to take the expenses of small business down. Mm-hmm. We are not a very pro small business government. You know, I hear their complaints all the time about useless regulation. So I'll be working with it on that side. Now, the wages, it can be difficult, but I've talked to many small businesses and they've adjusted, and we can always support that. I wouldn't mind a subsidy, you know, whereas for each person they employ, if they are, you know, a mom and pop shop with, you know, 10 people or less, we can help with that, or with tax breaks or some other way. But that money that they are getting does go back in the economy, and it does help. And so, all the cities that I have studied, which have raised the minimum wage, have actually performed better economically. And of course, for the workers, we know how expensive New York City is, and it's just to be able to afford decent housing and food and medicine. I think it's essential.
Okay, Brent. Now, my last question deals with the current council member. Obviously, Jimmy Van Bramer has been there now, 11 years, or soon to be 11 years. He's got his own style, does things his own way. How would you be different, and sort of how would you approach the job differently than he does, so to speak?
Well, I'd say, one of the things about my campaign is one of the issues is community empowerment. So I want to bring the community into the decision-making process, sort of on the way I did also with Annabelle Basin. But part of that is taking special interest out of the process. So I'm actually proud to be the first New York City Council candidate to refuse all donations from real estate developers. I've also refused donations from lobbyists, corporations, and political action committees. So I'm actually proposing to getting rid of the Economic Development Corporation, which I think is too influenced by the real estate industry, and giving resources to city planning so that we can, as a community, get together and discuss with city planning what the future of our neighborhood should be, and then work with them. So I'm really looking to make the community a partner. I have my ideas, but I know I don't know everything. So I'm going to be having more association with our community board, more association with the different groups around the neighborhood, and bringing people in on the big issues that affect our future, and trying for us all to work together.
Okay. Well, Brent, I'd like to thank you for spending time with me this morning, and, best wishes in your race.
I appreciate it, and we appreciate the work you do, as it press is the nerve center of democracy. So we want to encourage a free and fair press. We don't get that sometimes on the national level. And just to say, I would be very honored to be the next city councilman for this district. I really believe in community service and giving back. I think everybody's seen what happened during COVID, and the food pantries I established with the Mosaic Church and Woodside on the Move, which is now serving our community more than ever. And I really believe that government can work and can solve people's needs. I'm sort of a FDR Democrat, and I believe that those social services of education, healthcare, quality jobs are what we need right now. And as your city councilman, if I am elected, I would have a big influence on making sure that those services get to the individuals who need it, and making a city budget that actually helps and provides quality services for all of us.
All right, Brent. Well, thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much, Christian.